Have you ever read a headline and thought, how is this even possible in America? A judge lets a confessed killer walk free. A child is sentenced as an adult. A billionaire avoids prison while the poor are buried in debt. These aren't just tragic stories, they're warning signs. And today we're looking at 3 real-life cases that expose the cracks in America's justice system. Let's start with the case of Kalief Browder. A name that should never be forgotten. In 2010, Kalief was just 16 years old when he was accused of stealing a backpack in New York. No trial, no conviction, and yet he spent 3 years in jail at Rikers Island, most of it in solitary confinement. The system never proved he did it. In fact, charges were dropped, but not before the trauma of jail destroyed his mental health. Kalief died by suicide 2 years after his release. His case didn't just highlight how the system can crush the innocent, and it showed how cash bail and pretrial detention punish poverty. Here's the problem. If Kalief's family had money, he would have been home the same night, but he couldn't afford $3,000 in bail. In America, justice isn't always based on guilt or innocence. It's often based on your bank account. That brings us to case number 2, Brock Turner, a Stanford student and Olympic swimming hopeful. In 2015, Turner was convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman behind a dumpster. There were witnesses. There was DNA evidence. There was no real doubt about what happened. Yet, despite facing up to 14 years in prison, the judge gave him just 6 months in jail, and he only served 3. The judge said a longer sentence would have a severe impact on Turner. But what about the impact on the victim? The system didn't just fail her, it protected him. A privileged white athlete from an elite university got a pass, and when people saw that, they asked, is justice truly blind or just blind to privilege? Now, let's go to Oklahoma, the case of Richard Glossip. Glossip was sentenced to death for the 1997 murder of Barry Van Treese. But here's the catch. There's no physical evidence linking Glossip to the crime. The entire case hinged on the testimony of the actual killer who claimed Glossip hired him after being given a plea deal to avoid the death penalty himself. Over the years, Glossip's case has been riddled with misconduct, destroyed evidence, unreliable witnesses, and even admissions from prosecutors that key evidence was never shared with the defense. Independent investigations have called his conviction a miscarriage of justice, and yet he remains on death row. Why? Because even when the system knows it might have gotten it wrong, it resists correction. So, what do these 3 cases have in common? First, they all show that justice in America isn't always about truth. It's about power. Kalief Browder didn't have it. Brock Turner did. Richard Glossip is caught in a machine that doesn't want to admit its own errors. Second, they reveal that once the system sets something in motion, it's incredibly hard to stop. Whether it's pretrial detention, a lenient sentence, or a wrongful conviction, there's almost no off-ramp. And third, they force us to ask the uncomfortable question. If justice is supposed to be fair, why does it bend so predictably in favor of the wealthy, the white, and the powerful? Some people hear these stories and say, oh, well, that's the exception, not the rule. But how many exceptions does it take before the pattern becomes undeniable? The U.S. incarcerates more people than any other country on Earth. Black Americans are 6 times more likely to be imprisoned than white Americans. Wealthier defendants are more likely to get lighter sentences, better plea deals, and avoid jail altogether. This isn't theory, it's fact. Now, let's be clear. Not everyone in the system is corrupt or malicious. There are great judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and cops who truly care about fairness, but the system they operate in, it's stacked, it's overloaded, and it's deeply inconsistent. In many ways, it's broken. Not because it doesn't work, but because it works exactly as it was designed to. That design, rooted in a history of racial bias, economic inequality, and a political culture that prizes punishment over rehabilitation. Once you see it, you can't, unsee it. So what can we do? We can start with reforming cash bail. No one should sit in jail just because they're poor. We can invest in public defenders who are often overwhelmed and underfunded. We can demand transparency in sentencing. We can elect prosecutors who care more about justice than conviction rates. And we can pressure lawmakers to pass innocence protection laws, ban junk science, and fix appellate review systems that drag their feet even in clear cases of wrongful conviction. But perhaps most importantly, we can pay attention, share these stories, push for policy change, and stop treating cases like Kalief Browder, Brock Turner, and Richard Glossip as tragic anomalies. Because until we do that, they'll keep happening. If this video moved you, challenged you, or made you think differently about the legal system, hit that like button and subscribe. At Due Process Daily, we don't just cover the law, we hold it accountable.